Well, a very, very happy Thursday, and welcome to another episode of the TNC Sports Talk. My name is Justin. Today is January 8th of 2026, and we are getting ourselves ready for the semifinals tonight and tomorrow in the college football playoffs, as tonight, number 10 Miami takes on number 6 Mississippi State, and on Friday, we have number 5 Oregon take on number 1 Indiana. Now, if you asked me if these are your final four teams that would have made it this far, there's clear indication that performances from Indiana this year really suppressed. Oregon is one of those teams that would be an argument not to be in one of the final games. Miami took a little bit of a chance. They were given a chance and they're soaring with it. Ole Miss, not in Mississippi State. Ole Miss is one of those teams that I personally did not expect to make it this far in the semifinals of the college football playoff. I find it actually entertaining because, we're so prone to Alabama and Georgia and Ohio State. And don't get me wrong, I love all those players, all those teams, organizations, but this creates, the extension of college football playoffs, the fact that you're playing, you're expanding it to just, the Elite Four and whatnot. It creates more of a competitive style for college football, which I thought desperately needs it. I mean, it basically tells me that over half the schools in the association can qualify to be in the playoffs and now be under the spotlight where they have the opportunity to win a championship. And just imagine a organization like Ole Miss right now, where they can potentially beat Miami and potentially win the college football playoffs. I think it's unheard of. I think it's unprecedented in today's conversation of football. So I'm excited for these matchups. I'm excited for Miami and Ole Miss. Now, right off the bat, I think that tomorrow night's game between Oregon and Indiana really, I think, is probably the more marquee matchup in this, round. I, can already see with the way that Miami played last week, Miami just soaring through and dominating the game against Ole Miss. And, I figure that Miami will walk away heading into the college football playoffs. And I'm going to predict, this is a bold prediction here early on to kick off our Thursday's episode, but I'm predicting that it's going to be Miami versus Indiana in the college football championship. That's my prediction, and I am sticking with it here as we head into tonight's game. Kickoff is at 7:30, Miami, Mississippi. This game here, and let me get to more details. Tonight's game is going to be held at the State Farm Stadium in Glendale, Arizona, for the Fiesta Bowl, and it will be available on ESPN. While tomorrow night at 7:30, number 5 Oregon takes on number 1 Indiana at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, Georgia, for the Peach Bowl. That's also available on ESPN, and kickoff is also at 7:30. So we have made it this far into 2025. We are wrapping up another college football playoff series, and these are your top 4 teams. So who do you guys have? I want to hear what you guys have to say. So let me know who you guys think will win and advance to the championship round. I got Miami and Indiana. I know that's a polled prediction, but that is my prediction nonetheless. Man, I got to tell you, sports right now this is a fun week. I've actually had myself a blast because we have saw coaches get fired, and it's typical. It's always interesting to see what kind of coaches, what kind of changes a team is willing to make and their direction to move forward. And I say that because, we've seen, the the obvious coaches like Brian Daboll. We've seen Kevin Stefanski go. We've seen the Raheem Morris go. And we understand those. But, there's been some kind of surprises that's popped out there here halfway through a week. And that actually comes into today's news as Miami Dolphins have fired head coach Mike McDaniel after a 7-10 season with the Dolphins this year. And so the Dolphins are another team among those like Baltimore, who fired Jim Harbaugh back on Tuesday night, who are making a change either in their head coach or either in their general manager positions. So far this week, as of Thursday, there are 7 head coaches that were fired, along with 2 general managers. And, I guess we're going to have to just wait to see how teams decide to move on and progress without these coaches. When you look at Miami, things didn't go the way that they wanted to. They were in the hunt for a wild card position, but just struggled to maintain consistency throughout the season. And I really think maybe the question is a little bit deeper than Mike McDaniel. Obviously, we see what he hasn't been able to do with a talent quarterback like Tua Tagovailoa, Tyreek Hill, who got hurt. Some of the things that is out of Mike McDaniel's discretion. And that's one thing I was maybe pointing out yesterday, talking about the Jim Harbaugh firing. I feel like there are certain things that are without his discretion and he has no control over. Mike McDaniel doesn't have a control over a player being injured. And unfortunately, it comes at the expense of somebody, it comes at the expense of one of your top tier players in your organization. I think there's a lot more to be asked in Miami. So maybe this is also a relief. That's what I was thinking about this morning when I heard this news, is I'm not really so shocked. And all right, well, maybe Miami has decided, look, it's not working with Mike McDaniel. Let us move on. Let us find a different coach. But most so, what a relief. If you're Mike McDaniel, you're kind of relieved of your duties and you have an opportunity to present a case to another team in a possible coaching position. And so, that's the way that I perceive this. I mean, I was taken back to Harbaugh yesterday, and I was asking myself, who's going to have the better advantage of this situation? Does Baltimore have the advantage? Hey, we're going to get rid of John Harbaugh through his experience, through his tenure, through his dedication and hard work. We're going to go out there, find a new head coach that we believe can make some changes to get us over that hump than what John Harbaugh has given us. On the other hand, does John Harbaugh say, good riddance? I am out of this team. I can have a new look. John is not one of those guys that says, hey, I need to have it my way. We're going to scratch it from the bottom and work our way up. He is one of those coaches that can take with what's already been given and utilize that to his discretion. But I was just thinking about this morning. I've been pondering over this last couple of days as we see the market grow in coaching staffs. And I come to realize there are some compelling and really good coaches available this year. And all of them, regardless of what you think or what the status is from that team that they previously coached from. We actually have ourselves a pretty good list of group of guys. And I was like, well, is this coaching market better than any of the position players that we have this year in the free agent market? I mean, you have guys like, I think we just went through it. You have John Harbaugh, Mike McDaniel just joined that list. Who else do we have? Kevin Stefanski, Raheem Morris, Jonathan Gannon. Don't forget Brian Callahan. Brian Daboll is on, part of that list. Pete Carroll, I don't know what his future holds. We don't know the status of Mike Tomlin and what his future holds. There's other guys that, with the impressive seasons they've had with their, organizations, we can see offensive and defensive coaches get promoted this year. And when you compare this market list for the head coaches to players that are available on the free agencies, I guess I beg to differ and ask the question, maybe is the head coach free agent, market better and bigger right now than where these players get signed to? I think Mike McDaniel brings in some sort of wisdom, expertise. I think a fresh start you're looking at, and it's just the top of my head, I'm trying to envision a team that Mike McDaniel can play for next. That's not Miami. It's no one from the East Coast. Don't think he's going to play for the Giants. Could we see him as the next Cleveland Browns head coach? Possibility, right? Maybe, hey, let me have a chance at Shedeur Sanders. Now, Miami is one of the handful of teams that don't have head coaches. So who are their options lurking? It brings a sense of change. And that is something that I'm still getting used to as a football fan. These sometimes feel so unprecedented. What shocked the world for me a decade ago was when Peyton Manning, left the Indianapolis Colts. It was like, there's no way Peyton Manning was not going to be a Colt for life. But he joins the Broncos and goes on and wins the Super Bowl. And the same could be said for Tom Brady. I did not envision Tom Brady ever playing for a different team other than the New England Patriots, but he found himself with success with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I guess these moments are becoming more common than I expected them to be, at least in the football world. Baseball, we've gone through this numerous of times. We've seen players and coaches come and go, and matter of fact, that's almost the expectation, and especially in a low market ball club like the Cincinnati Reds, you build up a talent, he becomes a homegrown name, and then they trade him or they lose him to free agency because they're not willing to keep him. I think that's one thing for me that I'm scared heading into as years progress with Ellie De La Cruz. If he continues to progress, if he continues to be the ball player that he's set out to be, then there is no doubt that he doesn't come to a free agency situation where he has the opportunity to make more money playing for a competitive team, right? Same thing for Hunter Green. And who would be me as a fan of the Cincinnati Reds or as a fan of baseball, as a fan of Ellie De La Cruz, not to want him or support him in his decision to, go play for a better team, earn more money, and, possibly win a championship. Let's talk about the Bengals, for example. Joe Burrow is primarily one of those guys. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. We loved them. I would be disappointed as much as the next person that's a Bengals fan here on the table to watch Joe Burrow leave. But why would I want him to stick around if the Bengals don't make an effort to better themselves? And, that's how do you better themselves? Well, that's adding defensive players. That's bettering your offensive line. That may even be making some changes around your coaching staff. But unless we see that effort, there's nothing that is indicating to me, if I'm Joe Burrow, that says, look, they want to win. This is how they're showing me that they want to win. And so let's get it done. So several teams are looking for that new start. Mike McDaniel joins that list of people who are looking for a opportunity heading into 2026. And at the top of my head, when I pair Mike McDaniel, just the type of player he is and how he operates, for me, I feel like a solid matchup could be the Cleveland Browns. I may be completely wrong. The Las Vegas Raiders is another team that I think was so terrible this year that you would almost have coaches excited to jump in because they're willing to break it all down and rebuild it back from the top. And there's already some list of players coming from Las Vegas, like Brock Bowers. And, you want to be able to, when you pair with that type of talent, you're just a few clicks away, a different mindset here. So one of my questions that I wanted to discuss today is the top coaches who you should watch out for heading into this offseason. And Mike McDaniel joins that list of top coaches that you should watch out for potential job placement. Sometimes getting another chance somewhere else will do much wonders. But on this list, I have former Washington's offensive coordinator, Cliff Kingsbury. I think Cliff Kingsbury is one of those coaches, he is that needs that second time around. Developed and learned a lot. He had his run back in 19 to 22 with the Arizona Cardinals. He wrapped up that that era with a 28 and 37 and 1 record. And although he's been, Washington didn't make the playoffs, Jalen Daniels have been dealing with injuries this past year. An opportunity to possibly get another head coaching job is out there on the table. Now, here's my reference and here's my take. I prefer to see offensive coordinators, offensive coaches obtain a head coaching position. I am not a huge fan of defensive coordinators to take on the role as a head coach. I feel it's much easier to create a defensive team on the field, in your coaching staff, in the front office, than it is creating an offensive team. If you're an offensive coach, you're allowed to get your hands on the ball. You're allowed to get yourself in the situation with inputs, especially when you have those quarterbacks who need that guidance, who need the lead. Look, I think Joe Burrow's fine. I think Joe Burrow can run an offense by himself. Let him make the decisions. Let him work with the offensive coordinator. And the offensive coordinator would work with Joe Burrow and suggest things, but ultimately Joe Burrow makes that decision. If you get a new head coach for Cincinnati, you need someone that is hands-on defense, that can oversee and work with the defensive coordinator and saying, look, Joe, I trust you. I know what you're going to do. We're going to guide. We're going to collaborate, but you're going to run this offense. I'll take care of the defense. And that's where I would honestly place it at. It may be crazy, but that's where I honestly would consider this category. Now, there's teams that's out there like the New York Giants who is trying to build in Jackson Dart, who needs that little extra reference, who needs that guidance, that push. An offensive coordinator would be perfect because you're teaching and you're guiding someone like a Jackson Dart and coaching him up and training him to be that quarterback that can take on the offensive reign. So you're putting the power into your quarterback with some leash on the board. And then you look at teams like the Las Vegas Raiders, who can actually go either direction. I would say if you're an offense or defensive coordinator, but they have the number 1 overall draft. I don't know exactly where their heads are at when it comes down to selection. I think they would need help offensively. They would need to figure out their offensive suit before they figure out how to maintain their defense, how to match their defense. Cleveland Browns, they need a little bit of offensive help. They have the defensive talent, right? So it would only make sense if you're Cleveland to bring in an offensive coordinator or a head coach that can strictly shape and form an offense, because you already know what the defense provides. You don't touch that. You let them deal with what they're dealing with, and you try to better your offense. So, it's scenario, but I'm just not a huge fan of defense, because then, you're playing the defense game. You're playing the game where if you get behind, if you're up by a touchdown, you are relying your decisions and your expertise to keep the team in the loop. And sometimes it works, sometimes it fails. If you're an offensive coach, if you're an offensive coordinator, that pressure is not on you. It's only on you when you're in that 2-minute warning, you're down by 7, you need to run down the field to score a touchdown. But here are my offensive guys. We've had a couple of notables. We've had defensive coordinator Chris Shula, who has carried this Rams defense defensive unit into the top 10. And possibly, considering the Rams being one of the favorites heading into the Super Bowl this year. We have the Minnesota Vikings, Brian Flores, looking for possibly, I wouldn't deny not taking a look at Brian Flores. And then you got Kevin Stefanski and John Harbaugh who is also seeking coaching placements. So this offseason, you have a little bit of everything, which is great. So and I think hiring the right head coach will say a lot about what your direction would be. And it doesn't need to be, oh, well, I'm going to come in, I'm going to bring in my own staff, I'm going to change, I need a new quarterback, or I need a new this or that. It's strictly does that scheme work with the type of team that we have set up? I believe that John Harbaugh is capable of coming in and bettering any other team, that any team who signs him should have that load of confidence. I would honestly be scared as a Bengals fan if the Browns could get a hold of John Harbaugh. We've already just split the series with them 1-1 earlier this season. Now, maybe if it's up against Kevin Stefanski, maybe you have some different opinions, but with a head coach like John Harbaugh behind the reins, man, that's a unbeatable task. So, I don't know. What do you guys think? Where do these coaches are placed here this year? If I have to make any predictions, and I can't name them all, but I think Mike McDaniel would suit. I'm going to do Mike McDaniel with the Browns. I am going to do John Harbaugh with the Raiders. You still got to find maybe Brian Flores. I would say Brian Flores with the Ravens. Now, I know I'm just spitballing here and I'm predicting here, so I'm going to be wrong. I'm going to just jot this down. Could you see Kevin Stefanski with the Miami Dolphins? I think that would be an incredible pickup. Cliff Kingsbury, he's an offensive coordinator, maybe with Miami. Interesting. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below about where do you predict these head coaches or these coaching staffs that's available on the market will be placed as a head coach. So far, I'm predicting John Harbaugh. It would either be the Raiders or the Giants, okay? And then I'm also predicting Brian Flores with the Ravens, and then Mike McDaniel with the Browns, in my opinion. I don't know where Kevin Stefanski goes, or Shula, or Kingsbury. But Kingsbury, listen, we love a good offensive mindset. He's well respected, as an offensive coordinator. Has he proved himself enough to get into the top role back as a head coach? So you have that being said, you have Atlanta. I think Atlanta, you give him a shot. But this isn't only the end point of these. Earlier this morning, Matt Eberflus was released by the Dallas Cowboys as a defensive coordinator. He's also now added onto this list. So the list just piles on. Maybe it's too early to tell. Maybe. But, all right, before we get into our next and probably final segment of the episode, I wanted to talk a little bit about Enlightened Studios and their upcoming 2026 calendar year. As you know, I am partnering them along with their social media content creating team to help maintain a content creating social media page, engaging with the audience, providing followers, news and events and whatnot, moving forward throughout the course of the 2026 calendar year. Enlightened Studios is a performing arts company founded by Terry and Nikhil Chappell, and they have grown over the years with theater productions, films, arts sessions, and galleries, and even books. They look to carry that into 2026 as they have a complete calendar year of events we don't want to miss out. And that starts off this February with Grassroots at the Artsville Theater in Cincinnati, Ohio. The play set in the 1950s about a black family who move into a all-white neighborhood. They face and they deal when the truths come out from the neighborhood. It's about family, faith, forgiveness, and the courage to face the truth when it appears. This play is going on from February 20th through March 1st. Tickets are still available. Get them while they last by heading over to tickettailor.com. A link will be provided in the description of this video below. Get your tickets today and join everyone for Grassroots and all their other productions in 2026. Alrighty, wanted to have a little bit of baseball conversation with you. Yesterday, we began our top series where we give you who we think are in our top 5, top 10. It comes down to wrestling, football, baseball, you name it. And these are moments, matches, events, teams, players, whatnot. And that's something that we're going to be continuing over throughout the next couple weeks. And I didn't want to just go back to back with wrestling. So today I was thinking about who are my top 5 baseball teams from 2025 who kind of shocked the baseball world. Maybe it's the performance that they've had. Maybe they were expected to go down a different path. Instead, they had success. Maybe they were supposed to have success, yet they failed tremendously. Who impressed me the most in 2025? And as I share and reveal who I have, I want to invite you to share who you think should be in your top 5 in this category. And so just leave a comment below, get involved into the chat, and I want to be able to share that here on our show with you. So if you want to be heard and you want your opinion and your voice matters, let me know in the comments and I will make sure I share that with you and then provide my opinion whether or not I agree or disagree with that. So coming in at number 5, before coming in at number 5, I want to talk about a few things. I want to talk about teams that didn't make my top 5 list, possibly close. Cleveland Guardians. The Cleveland Guardians, I think, did surprise a lot of people by taking away the division, as it seemed like they struggled throughout the course of the year, but they were able to scrape up and manage an 88-74 record. The Minnesota Twins, who I thought would have possibly won the AL Central, they ended up kind of not tanking, but tanking in a sense. They kind of traded some key players, and it got me scratching my head because it doesn't seem like they're done. They may be heading down south, in the progress, maybe resetting themselves. Team that surprised me that didn't make this list, the Houston Astros not making the postseason for the first time in a while. The Atlanta Braves finishing in 4th place of the NL East, under 500. The Cincinnati Reds mustering a 500 better record, finding themselves and slipping themselves into a wild card position. So there's a lot of teams that have made impacts either in a positive or negative way that I have not put in my top 5 list. But here's coming in at number 5, and that belongs to the Boston Red Sox. The Boston Red Sox, around the summertime, around the trade deadline, indicated, at least to the fans, that they were almost giving up on the year. They were going to begin cutting back their roster and their finances in hopes to maybe rebuild in the offseason. And so, just like that, I think a lot of people said, look, the Boston Red Sox were out of the playoffs. We're not, it would be a miracle with them trading a few guys away that they would be able to stay in the run, in the hunt. And next, they go on and they win a wild card position. In September, they take a lot of people by surprise because not only they win, it's almost a comfortable win here. 89-73, and I think it turned a lot of cheeks for a lot of different players. And now you're being, it's you kind of force the Red Sox asking themselves, well, what direction are you planning to move in now? Here's the offseason. Do you continue to build off of what you have, or do you still try to find open space, deal some more players? And it seems to me, based off of what I've seen and picking up guys like, was it Wilson Contreras from the Cardinals? Then they pick up, I believe, Sonny Gray. They want to maintain relevancy in the division and in the American League overall. So they've added some key players and took advantage from some teams that are in the opposite direction. And it looks like they are ready to go with this new image heading into 2026. Coming in at number 4 will be the Detroit Tigers, who really shocked me in the run that they've had throughout the course of the year. Yeah, towards the back end, maybe, they were gaslighted. Maybe they were tanked in September. That's what it looked like. But the Tigers, I think, holding the American League Central and being up there in the division, I think surpassed a lot of my expectations for them this past season. Like you mentioned, I was I was visioning the Minnesota Twins, maybe the Guardians, possibly the Royals. I predicted that the Tigers would have finished down at the bottom of the division, but they really made a run, an impressive run that you kind of, out of all the teams that you want to see come back and have another crack at it, the Tigers are one of those teams. And so for me, the Tigers really stood out. I absolutely despised of it early on in the season. I was waiting for that moment to be able to say, I told you so. And they almost got away, but they were able to muster out a wild card position. And that really impressed. And that's why they made my top 5. The Toronto Blue Jays, I got to say, is one of those teams that you did expect, with the talent that was behind them, to make a push, to have a run, to possibly win a division and make it as far as they did. You got Bo Bichette, Vladimir Guerrero, Max Scherzer. I mean, they were stacked, right? It was a little too good to be true almost, right? Because they're that quiet team up north, in Canada, kind of just hiding and doing their business, not making any splashes. I mean, the Yankees are making a splash. The Red Sox are making the splash. The Tigers are being talked about. Toronto's not being talked about. It's being surpassed right over everyone's heads, in my opinion, at least from what I've seen in the conversations throughout the year. But they maintained their consistency. They stayed healthy. They had a good strategy heading it, throughout the course of the year. And when it was really time to play, because, you separate those teams at, great, you have success throughout the year. You can maybe win a division, go as a wild card. But the Blue Jays, they showed up in October. They beat the Yankees. They beat the Mariners. And they came very close in beating the Dodgers. So they would have been up higher if there was less of an expectation of their success. We knew that they were a good team, but how big of a mark were they going to leave it on? I mean, the Yankees are a good team, and they made a wild card position, both tying at 94 wins. I think the Toronto Blue Jays, coming so close, they have unfinished business. That they have unfinished business, and that they're going to be persistent and motivated to get back to the playoffs, get back to the World Series, and be the team that can beat the Dodgers as the Dodgers try to make a three-peat. But because of the talent that was already on the roster, that's why I have them in as number 3. Coming in at number 2 is going to be the Seattle Mariners. What impresses me the most is that I don't remember the last time when the Houston Astros did not make a postseason. They have been the pivotal market to the American League West, whether it's a division or a wild card, for the past several years. Every now and then you will see the Mariners or the Rangers, in this sense, kind of climb to that mountaintop. But the Astros have maintained consistency. Does that mean that there's an official change in direction for Houston, or was this maybe a knockoff and we'll see them back in the playoffs here this coming up season? But the Mariners, who, for me, when I hear about the Mariners, yeah, they got talent. Julio Rodriguez, Cal Raleigh. Yeah, they have players. Yeah, they're a decent team, and they play in a division that is really not hard to have success in. But it's about completing a season and getting over that hump. And when you've completed the season and you're still alive, you're one of the last men standing. Are you ready to play more? We talk about this in football. Playing 5 quarters playing 4 quarters isn't enough. You got to play 5 quarters. Mariners you can't play 6 months. You got to play 9 months of baseball. You got to play a whole year of baseball. And the Mariners had a very tough battle with the Toronto Blue Jays. I believe that it was either team that, when you look back on who made it to the playoffs for the American League in 2026 or 2025, I wouldn't have had it any other way. Seattle, with their historic remarks throughout the season, Toronto Blue Jays, either team who would have won that and would have went on to face the Dodgers would have been my best prediction of winning the World Series. And I'm sorry for those Red Sox or Yankees fans out there, maybe the Guardians or the Tigers fans out there. When you when I looked them up, I mean, we just saw a Dodgers and Yankees World Series. Not impressed. Yeah, it's a historical moment. Yeah, it's the best of the best. The top team of the American League versus the top team of the National League. That regardless of the record, oversits everyone. But I like to see these underdog teams, these teams that you don't necessarily can confirm or guarantee that they waltz right into the World Playoffs and win a series and we'll go to the World Series. The Blue Jays and the Mariners, yes, they are good, but we expected them to stop at the division series. We expected them to stop at the wild card series. We did not anticipate neither one of them going to the World Series. So if we run this back heading into 2026, if I'm looking for any team to repeat themselves, it's the Mariners and the Blue Jays from the American League. I feel like it reflects, right? This offseason, they saw how close they could have gone to beating the best team in baseball and how far short they came of that. They've improved and made adjustments to their team during the offseason, trying to bring the same players back for chemistry purposes, trying to come back and say, hey, this time things are going to be different. Coming in at number 1 are going to be the Los Angeles Dodgers. It's tough. I think baseball mentality is a tougher dynamic than what it is football. Football, physical. Okay. You get, it's an aggressive sport, but I don't think it's as mental as it is. Maybe when you have to play, in the tundra snow or, the gusty winds or it's negative 20 below. Sure, I think that's where it gets physical, mental. But I don't think it gets, maybe playing in the Super Bowl, it could get mental. You got 2 whole weeks off and then you have to play an extra, go into another month of football, playing the sport. But baseball is mentality. And to go down and be able to run it back, do it again, be back-to-back champions. Now we're going for a 3-peat. That takes a lot of mental discipline to say, hey, we got to put the last years behind us. We're no better than anyone else until we prove them otherwise this season. And they're good. They have a division that, 3 teams finish 500 or better. Arizona was 1 win away from also finishing 500. The Padres were 3 games away from them. I think it argues, look, the Dodgers know that, hey, we're a good team. We could stretch it out. Come postseason, we have our elite players and they get the job done. They almost felt the face of reality when they almost lost the World Series to the Toronto Blue Jays. But for me, now there's 2 stories and there's 2 headlines heading into 2026 that we're going to be focusing and paying attention. 1, the Dodgers look for a 3-peat. That's given. And 2, is what American team, okay? Because I guess I don't want to just throw the Dodgers in there, but presumably the Dodgers will go back to the World Series because right now they are favored to go back to the World Series. Presumably they go back to the World Series. Who on the American League are good enough to not only give the Dodgers a run for the money, which we saw with the Blue Jays, but who can beat the Dodgers and claim victorious and prevent them from having a 3-peat. And the reason why I have the Dodgers in a 2026 early prediction of winning not only the division again, but heading to the World Series is because when they went to the playoffs this year, they they walked over the Reds. That was nothing. 2 games in and out, done. They humiliated the Philadelphia Phillies and trampled over the Milwaukee Brewers. There's no competition for the Dodgers in the playoffs other than the Toronto Blue Jays, who went down to wire to wire against the New York Yankees and the Seattle Mariners. And so when you ask about, well, if there's any team in the American League that you would like to see face the Dodgers in the World Series this year, I mean, 2, if not 3 comes to mind. It's the Mariners, it's the Blue Jays, and sure, let's throw in the Yankees as well. Otherwise, I don't see another team up there. But that is my top 5 teams that stood out and impressed me in 2025. And so I am eager to hear what you guys have to say or think. This is an honest biased opinion. So I encourage you to make an unbiased opinion. Like I said, sure, there's teams like the Reds. Atlanta was one of those teams that disappointed this year. The Astros are another team that disappointed this year. Even the Baltimore Orioles disappointed in this year. But I'm interested in learning what you guys have to put on to that list. So tomorrow, Friday's episode, we got Friday Night SmackDown. We will talk briefly about the college football playoffs as Miami and Ole Miss take on each other right now tonight. And then tomorrow we have Oregon taking on Indiana. Primetime game. I'm going to sit back and watch it. We will review and predict the NFL's wildcard race as we have 6 teams, 2 games on Saturday, 3 games on Sunday, and a game on Monday. And then we'll wrap up and get you guys ready for a weekend of sports. So our next top moments are going to be sometime next week. What day? I don't know. I want to see what top male WWE wrestlers do you have? Because I feel like we're going to have difference of opinion. And when you think about this list, top 5, not top 10, but top 5, I want you to think about what they've accomplished this past year, what type of accomplishments they have left this industry. John Cena preached a lot about leaving the company better than the way he left it. And so one of my questions that I'm asking myself that I'm thinking about is did John Cena leave the WWE in 2025, just alone in 2025, from his return to the Royal Rumble, to his heel turn, to his 17-time champion, to losing the title, at SummerSlam, beating Randy Orton and all those athletes, facing Brock Lesnar, AJ Styles, tapping out to Gunther. The entire 2025, did John Cena leave the company better than the way he found it? And if that is the case, does he deserve to be in the top 5? Or is there another reason, despite him retiring? Because obviously he retired, and that led to them focusing on his, highlighting his events, his venues, and his matches throughout the year. Is that alone worthy enough to be in my top 5? So male wrestlers, also think about your female wrestlers, because I feel like we'll come back and we'll talk about our female wrestlers also next week. We'll have to get a coordination on when we're going to talk about those topics. But think about that as we head into a weekend early on. I'm going to remind you guys tomorrow, and we'll let you know what day we spill that out. But that is all the time I have for you guys. Look, listen, I want to engage with you. I'm not going to be right about everything. I'm not going to be on top of everything, but I'm trying to be more interactive with everyone on social media. So you got to do me a favor. We are active on our TikTok page. Head over to our TikTok page, give us a follow, watch those videos, engage into the comments, because I feel like that's where all the comments are going. TikTok, TNC Sports Talk. Head over to our Facebook page, TNC Sports Talk. Give us a follow. We are trying to be more active in news stories and events. I posted my top 5 from yesterday there, videos, shorts, reels, so on and so forth. So follow and share it with a friend. Have someone else follow it. Your goal should be to have 5 people you may know. Hey, follow them, give them a like, give them a follow, share their page, and listen to what he has to say. Comment, get engaged. Obviously, we're on our YouTube channel. Like, share, subscribe, have those notifications on. We'll post videos, shorts. I got, NFL Madden 26 playoffs about to be posted. I just got wrapped up with Saturday's games, Sunday's wrapping up. Now, one thing I want to just give people an information about, these games are not resembling what the actual NFL games are. This was all based off of a franchise series that was played from the Madden game throughout the course of this season. So keep that in mind. Then we also have our podcasting page. You can listen to us on Spreaker, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Download us on iHeartRadio, TNC Sports Talk. Check our podcast out. Like us, download us, listen to us in the car, listen to us in the office at work. listen to us at the gym, and carry us with you wherever you go. So I want to be more engagement this year. That is one of my goals and one of my aspirations. I can't help it without your support and your help. So I want to thank everyone for tuning in to today's episode. That is all the time I have for you. We'll wrap up, get you guys ready for the weekend, and wrap up a week tomorrow. And until then, you guys have a wonderful rest of your day and take care.